I was doing some EMDR therapy, some PTSD based therapy with a client in my office today. And as I've said many times on here, don't worry if you think it's you. The day that this airs is weeks after I make the video. So, doing some EMDR therapy and was thinking of the first kind of like mass traumatic event that I responded to when I was young. And we had a debriefing after, just some of my thoughts about that. I thought I'd share them with you because maybe you see some of the same things when you deal with traumatic events, whether you're a therapist or somebody that goes out to these events or just had this in your own life, and how I continue to see them as I do therapy work, admittedly, 20 something plus years later. So I was young. I was either a brand new EMT or I was an EMT student doing ride-alongs. I can't remember which, exactly the time period, but I did have a pager for my local EMS because they were a small company. So I must have been part-time if I had the pager by then. So, and I hear a wreck go out in the country. We covered a very, very large county. And out in the country, and I don't remember anything special about the original dispatch. But when the two paramedics that got there, people that I considered friends and mentors, I still remember their name to this day. When the female paramedic got on the radio, when she got there, she requested more help. And I remember, and not in the exact terms, when the dispatcher asked, "What kind of help? Like, do you need an ambulance? Do you need a fire truck? Do you need?" And she said, "Send everybody. Send everybody." And there was definite panic in her voice. And that's not a knock to her. This was a very bad scene. And I won't go into the details about it, but two farm-related vehicles had struck each other. A lot of people were ejected from these farm vehicles at a high rate of speed. So lots of victims. I don't remember how many. It was fairly chaotic. But I remember hearing that even before the tones went off again. I remember her saying on the radio and jumping up, and we all ran down to the EMS station. I think we had 3 more ambulances. And from what I remember, we took every one of them. So we took every ambulance that we could. The fire department, which was separate, excuse me, I'm on a 1-lane bridge, and I guess there's a guy that doesn't understand physics and tried to come onto the 1-lane bridge. Genius. Excuse me. So I remember we loaded up these ambulances and we went, and there was, fairly heavy number of, individuals laying on the ground, injured, adults, kids. Anyway, we did what we had to do. I remember being fairly chaotic. We got it all cleaned up, or at least we got the patients out of there and taken where they need to go. And to this day, decades later, I don't remember the outcome of it. But I do remember that was the first time that I heard one of my mentors in EMS at the time not sound out of control. I don't think she was out of control, but clearly a helpless feeling, a loss of being able to handle this situation, or at least a loss of what to do initially, or having the right words to get the right people sent out. And we had a debriefing afterwards, and I went to the debriefing, and I honestly don't remember having a lot of emotion about this call, having a lot of negative cognitions about this call. It was chaos and it was sad. But I remember we had this debriefing. We go around the room as many of your critical incident stress debriefing or managements or diffusings do. And, what happens in that room stays in that room, so I'm not going to be detailed by any means. But the overall sense that I got was, why did we go to that? And I remember thinking, I'm not going to talk about anybody in the room, what they had to say. What I remember thinking is, honestly, the reason I went was because I heard a friend of mine, somebody I considered a friend or a mentor, that needed help. And that's why I went. Of course, I was enjoying EMS at the time. It was my career before law enforcement. But I remember I went because they, on the radio, sounded like they needed help. And gosh, I had to have been 18 years old, maybe, barely. I must have been, if I was working part-time, must have been 18. And I remember that to this day, that event itself has never bothered me. What I do remember clearly, I can't even tell you what the patients look like. What I do remember clearly is that my friends needed help. And all these years later, what that translates to me, and that I will continue to see, just in the previous couple of weeks, I went out for to help a local fire department that had just dealt with a big critical incident, a fairly mass incident that involved, adults and kids, so that adds to it. And I saw the same thing in them. Not that they couldn't control it. They did an awesome job. They did an amazing job. In fact, one of the doctors said they did an amazing job. The pre-hospital staff. They did an amazing job. Did exactly what they needed to do. But I saw in them what I saw in that medic 20 plus years ago. It wasn't a lack of control. It was that feeling of feeling helpless or hopeless or not good enough. None of which were actually physically true. They weren't helpless. They weren't hopeless. They did exactly what they were trained to do. They were absolutely good enough. They did so well that a doctor came out and complimented them. Which, if you work in pre-hospital care, you know is pretty rare these days. For them to compliment you instead of cut you down about something. And so clearly, they weren't helpless and hopeless and not good enough. But you could see in their face before we did the debriefing or the diffusing that they know technically they did the best that they could. No doubt about it. Everybody in the room said so. The people that have done this job for a long time said so. And you knew that they believed the technicality of it, but emotionally they continue to feel helpless and hopeless, not good enough. Some of you may go back in my videos and find the first time that I ever truly felt that way was at a wreck, not the one that I'm talking about now, but one that I felt like I should have done more, could have done more, and physically could not have. Absolutely no way whatsoever. There was a long investigation because it was a fatal wreck. Nobody could have fixed this situation. But I had been to tons of fatal wrecks before that. I worked the highway. And, but that one left me feeling those words of helpless, hopeless, not good enough. And I just continue to see that as I look now, back then and look now in what traumatic events will cause within people. So in my previous videos, even this week or this month, depending on how they air, are about that you have to change your filter now, and that's true. So I'm not going back on what I said about the trauma mattering. The trauma does matter. It does impact us. But it's what you feel about yourself and other people in the world that is getting you in trouble now. And if those people 20 plus years ago and the people weeks ago or myself from 10 plus years ago, if we continue to feel helpless and hopeless, not good enough about an event that technically we know we weren't, then we're going to continue to carry that overreaction response, that stronger demand of self, stronger demand of other people, and stronger demand of the world. And that is going to continue to be our filter to get us in trouble. Now, this video was a little bit disorganized. I'm sure it feels that way. It started with some story and but I want to culminate it with, and some of these talks in the truck are just going to be me talking and thinking about this stuff. I want to give these ideas to you. I don't want to make perfect videos. Well, if I've ever made a perfect video, I don't want to make perfect videos with the perfect lighting and the perfect script, because I'll hold back on too much of what I feel is important and that I want you to know. So this one's about feeling helpless and hopeless and not good enough, and that filter from trauma can continue to be your filter for today and get you in trouble in the same manner of demands of yourself, other people in the world. You may have to get some help with that. That's what we do. But if you continue to feel chaotic or out of control about it, and it's continuing to change your life now, it's time we do something about it. It's time we get that narrative changed.